This is one of the windows in our sanctuary. It is based on a photo that was taken in Amsterdam in 1948 as part of the gathering of the World Council of Churches. And I'm sure that at the time that the church was built in 1964, some of these men were still alive. And if I wanted to go back over historical records, I bet I could find exactly who they are. I have not done that, but it would be interesting to try as a project. Today, we're going to be talking about what we mean when we say, I believe in God the Father. And as we do that, I have to start with this window. And I'll tell you why. Way back in the 1980s, when I was in seminary, and even before that when I was in college, there was a very strong push, and rightfully so, to recognize the importance and the equality of women as part of the body of Christ. All the people in that picture, all of the leaders were men. Now, if you think that women have not been the leaders of the church as well as the men for 2,000 years, you don't know church life. But additional burdens have always been put on the women. Not always. I don't think Jesus did it. And there were times in the earliest days when there were women who were valued simply for themselves and for their wisdom and for their faith and love and service. But on the whole, the belief in God as Father has both been used wrongly to undermine the feminine side of humanity, and has also been wrongly used to locate all authority on the male side. When the Creed was written, there were no women that we know of in the room. And going way, way back in history, it has been exceptional when women have been given their due. And the women specifically who have held positions of prominence and leadership both had to go far beyond what most men would have been expected to do to reach that point, and had to go far beyond often their own comfort zones in order to do so. Now, this does not have to do directly with saying we believe in God the Father. But in recent years, and one generation, 2 generations in terms of this is the blink of an eye, we have come to recognize the importance of saying clearly and directly that when we speak of the way that we understand God, that God is the norm and not humanity. We are made in God's image, male and female, made in God's image. And it is part of our privilege. I'm trying, I want to use the word destiny, but if I use that, it sounds like predestination, and I don't mean that. But
when we are at our best and when we come to perfection through God's activity, and when we finally are who we should all be, we will be in the image of God. And that means that as we speak, as we work, as we grow toward that, our current images are always going to be imperfect and yet important. We look at the world around us and we look for the signs and the means of expressing God in his deepest being. And I said his. English does not have a neuter pronoun. If we were to call God he/she, that would be an option. It'd be kind of awkward. If we called God it, that moves God out of the realm of a sentient being into an object in English. If we simply kept saying God and never used a pronoun, it's an option. But again, it isn't how we speak of one another. We could use the word there. The problem is that over time, there could sound plural. And one thing we have had to fight for thousands of years throughout the Bible and throughout every human life is to avoid having more than one God. When we speak of the Trinity, we're speaking of God as three in one and one in three. And it's a great mystery, and that's what the creed is largely about. What are the parameters? What are the limits? How can we say that without going too far in one direction or too far in another? How can we reveal or express what has been revealed to us of the inner workings of God and even of God's just day-to-day working in our lives without misspeaking? And often we will misspeak. So we lay down these ways and these norms of doing it. Creeds. And for us, for somebody like me, who grew up saying he of God, that is the personal pronoun that I would use. In a couple generations, perhaps it will be different. Am I apologetic about this? Yes and no. Was this at all an issue for the people who formulated the creeds? No. But we continue to struggle with finding a proper expression that works in our day and in our age. And we get it wrong, and we get it right. Time will tell. Now I'm going to come back, and in the next installation of this series, I'll just jump right straight ahead to speaking of God the Father. And it has to do with relationships. One further thing. Simply because God has authority does not mean that all men have authority. It is not an automatic embodiment of God's authority to be male. Be nice if it were. Hey, doesn't work that way. And to sort of grasp that, and especially if it means that you're going to come across as authoritarian, that is a deep misunderstanding, both of who we are as human beings, the proper relationship among human beings, and especially within a marriage or a family. But it also shows a profound misapprehension of God. We cannot understand God apart from Christ, who did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, and being found in human form, was obedient even to death, even death on a cross. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself when I say that. But it has to be said before a lot of things get taken out of context or put into a context where they don't belong or didn't arise. I should stop before I get myself into total trouble. But if I do, I trust that it's good trouble.